My sister is in a business battle with her sworn enemy. The two presidents of the two corporations arranged to duel right under the building. When I rushed to help, it was too late. My sister, wanting to show off her Tonda talent to the media when performing a sidekick, accidentally sprained it. I carefully helped my sister onto the stretcher. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out from behind. "My dear, do you want to break up with me because of this kind of woman?" My sister is a famous figure in financial magazines, among the top 100 young female entrepreneurs. Her tricks are completely inherited from my father's cunning and sinister. Lu T Group and Co T Group have been in confrontation for many years. My sister once ordered someone to uproot 2 potted plants in front of their company, and bribed 2 of their cleaning ladies to go on strike. After that, she sent me, who had just returned from studying abroad, to work as a spy in Lu Nguyen's company. But during the mission, I accidentally made a mistake and had to run home in frustration. That day, I returned in a disheveled state. Seeing my sister and father discussing the plan to buy Lu T Group, I stood outside the door and carefully called out, "Dad, sister." The 2 people in the room turned their heads at the same time. Because I was in a hurry to return from Lu Nguyen's company, I even forgot to put on a coat. The winter weather was bitterly cold, the wind whistled in gusts, making my nose and eyes red from the cold, making me look like I had just cried or just sniffed. My sister slapped the table. "Are Lu T's people bullying you?" Hearing the word bullying, I felt a bit embarrassed and lowered my head. In my mind, Nguyen's cold, elegant face appeared, the small red mole on her collarbone, her sweat-soaked skin and her suppressed gasps. "Sister, actually that." I hesitated and wanted to say something. But my sister noticed something unusual, frowned and looked at me a few times, then her eyes stopped at the scabbed wound at the corner of my mouth. Her face immediately darkened and she coldly asked, "Who caused the mouth wound?" I hesitated to explain. "Sister, actually." Lu Nguyen hadn't finished her sentence yet. My sister slapped the table and stood up. "Did that girl named Lu send someone to beat you?" "Last time, she stole a contract from my company. Last time, she made me lose face in front of the media. This time, does he dare to touch my younger brother?" Seeing my sister's strong reaction, I opened my mouth in shock and then silently closed it. After a while, I decided to swallow my confession. In the end, I still didn't dare to tell the truth that the wound on my lip was not beaten by Lu Nguyen's people, but that she bit it herself. I returned to my room and sighed. There were 43 missed calls from Lu Nguyen on the phone. She is the president of Lu T Group, also a thorn in my sister's side, and her sworn enemy for many years. The company's business dispute has long escalated into a personal feud. Sitting on the bed, my mind, which had been excited since last night, gradually regained consciousness. Suddenly I realized that, even if I had to risk being exposed by my sister, I should confess to her that I had accidentally loved Lu Nguyen. But what about Lu Nguyen? When she discovered that I was not only the younger brother of her competitor but also intended to sabotage her company from the beginning, deceiving and betraying her feelings for so long, would she hate me to the core in the next second? When I was an insider, I carelessly flirted with Lu Nguyen. So careless that what happened last night. Now that I think back, I realize I was too arbitrary. The reason Lu Nguyen was able to confront my sister for so long was entirely because they both used the same sinister tricks. Once she discovers my true identity and purpose, she will definitely not forgive me. Thinking of this, I suddenly felt a chill down my spine. After a moment of hesitation, I opened the chat box with Lu Nguyen. The last text message was just sent to me, "Called you so many times, but you didn't answer." When I opened my eyes this morning, I thought I had been scammed. Lu Nguyen has always been a cold and quiet person. Now texting like this, it's obvious that I'm angry because I didn't answer the phone. I didn't answer, thinking it was time to stop. So, I sent a breakup text and then gritted my teeth and blocked the number. She said she couldn't bear it, which was also true. Anyway, Lu Nguyen and I have secretly known each other for several months now. She also takes good care of me, but until now, she doesn't even know my real name. When my sister sent me to Nguyen's company as a spy, she not only helped me prepare all the fake documents but also gave me a new name to avoid detection. Although I don't know how Lu Nguyen will react, I know one thing for sure: even if she turns this whole country upside down, she won't be able to find me to settle the matter. But I didn't expect that the next time I met Lu Nguyen would be in this situation. She and my sister arranged a duel right in front of the company. Initially, the online war of words became a hot topic just because of the new product. After that, my sister proactively left a comment under her post. Tuesday, 3 p.m., in front of the company. I'm waiting for Ms. Lu Nguyen. She's usually a restrained, elegant, cold person who never pays attention to verbal fights, but this time she answered with exactly one word: okay. That day, at 3 p.m., journalists surrounded our company. Before going down, my sister confidently patted my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I'm Black Tonda, this time I will definitely help you get justice." I remained silent until I received a call from my sister. "If you rush in, it's too late." My sister sprained her ankle because she danced too hard. And then, just as I was about to leave quietly, a tall, thin figure blocked my way. "It's Lu Nguyen. Why did you break up with me just because of this trash?" I bowed my head to avoid eye contact. She said in a slightly apologetic voice, "Lu Nguyen, we broke up." Did I say I agreed? She was wearing a high-class women's suit. The buttons were slightly open to reveal the remaining kiss marks. I couldn't help but look up, still seeing a face so beautiful that it made people panic. Remembering how she looked when she was in love made her heart beat so fast that it became unstable. The uneasy feeling gradually grew. My mind began to go a little crazy with love. I deliberately tilted my head, avoiding looking at Lu Nguyen, and said firmly, "If you don't agree, it's useless, I'm bored of you." Lu Nguyen raised her eyebrows slightly and repeated slowly, "Are you bored?" Up until now, Lu Nguyen has always known how to calculate ahead and never reveal her emotions easily. At this moment, the corner of her lips curled into a faint smile, but her eyes were covered with a layer of darkness. "So that useless bitch is your new lover?" Hearing Lu Nguyen use a disdainful tone when referring to my sister, I couldn't help but speak up in defense. "Don't talk about her like that. Besides her bad personality, hot temper and poisonous tongue, she's still very powerful. My sister is really very good. Recently, after taking over her father's company, she has convinced her seniors and veteran employees alike, showing that her tricks are not ordinary." Afraid that Lu Nguyen wouldn't believe me, I tried to add, "Really, she's even better than you in some aspects." Before he could finish his sentence, Lu Nguyen seemed to have lost all patience, directly pulled me back, and forcefully locked my lips. Her kiss was so strong that I could only wonder how I would explain the wound on my lip to my sister. After letting go, Lu Nguyen still hugged me tightly, her hoarse voice carrying a bit of fatigue. "Don't talk anymore. Lately the company has been busy. I haven't had much time to be with you. It's my fault. Follow me home. Can I please you with whatever you want?" I didn't answer right away, not because I hadn't thought of a way to refuse, but because at that moment my uncle had just passed by the company building, standing across the street, glaring, trying to stretch his neck to see clearly who the person in my arms was. Luckily, Lu Nguyen has very good body proportions, so I can just hide her. I didn't care. She hugged me and didn't dare move even a little bit. "Isn't that right, Uncle?" Don't wait for something like that anymore, okay? But my uncle still refused to leave. I didn't dare to struggle too much, so I just pulled Lu Nguyen into her car. The long version of the commercial vehicle had its windows rolled down, so no one could see inside. Lu Nguyen tightened her grip on my waist, her warm fingertips gently brushing my thin skin. She lowered her eyes, her tone was emotionless. I've lost a lot of weight these days. I felt tickled, and just as I was about to dodge, she held me tightly. Is your new person not treating you well? Lu's voice was Lu Nguyen's faint. Then, he suddenly hugged me tightly, not letting me struggle, grabbed my collar, then bit my neck with a clear kiss mark. The dark red kiss mark appeared right where clothes could not cover it, like a mark declaring sovereignty. The corners of Lu Nguyen's lips curled slightly, as if extremely satisfied, but I was dumbfounded. The wound on the lip could also be explained to my sister as being beaten by someone, but could this kiss mark on the neck also be explained as being caused by being beaten? When Lu Nguyen approached me again, I turned my face away to avoid her kiss. The atmosphere in the cramped space seemed to freeze, so quiet that it seemed only my voice could be heard. Lu Nguyen, I told you, we broke up. I don't like this. Her movements stopped, the happiness from before immediately disappeared. She raised her eyes to look at me, expressionless. When you were with me before, you didn't say that. Are you already bored with the results after only a few months? Lu Wei, when you say these words, do you dare to reconsider your conscience? I felt guilty, gently placed my hand on my chest, and sure enough, I felt a bit of pain. This name Lu Wei was originally fake, given to me by my sister to hide my identity. My real name is Ko Gan, the only son of the Ko family. Lu Nguyen stood up, her face calm, her whole body showing heavy pressure. Okay, I don't want to continue arguing about this anymore. She picked up the jacket next to the chair, her tone not allowing refusal. In the bag there is a formal gown and a gift for you. Come to the party with me tonight. Just stay at my place these days so you don't run around and make me look for you. Before I could react, the car door was locked tightly. The driver followed Lu Nguyen's instructions before getting out of the car and taking me straight to her villa. Lu Nguyen started his career with nothing and was able to get to where he is today. The means were certainly not simple. But she treated me so gently that I sometimes forgot that in the eyes of others, Lu Nguyen was someone who was absolutely not easy to touch. I was kept in her villa for 3 hours. My sister probably doesn't have back pain anymore. At this time, he was constantly calling and urging, Ko Gan, where are you? Didn't you tell me yesterday? Today is the birthday party of the Feng family's son. Our whole family is not allowed to be absent. I sighed sadly. Lu Nguyen's door had fingerprint locks both inside and outside. I couldn't open it at all, so I could only grit my teeth and say a few words to my sister. Just as he was about to hang up, the door was suddenly pushed open. Lu Nguyen stood in front of me, her face cold and emotionless. Her eyes stopped on my face, then slowly looked down at the phone that was in the middle of a call. She raised her eyebrows slightly, her tone was cold. Who wants to come pick you up? My sister heard the voice of a strange woman and was immediately alert. Ko Gan, where are you? Why is there a woman's voice talking? I just felt a little dizzy before my eyes, so I smiled bitterly. It's really bad luck. Can I also encounter these cruel situations? The strangely silent atmosphere made me feel like all the secrets would be exposed in the next second. In my shock, I could almost imagine Lu Nguyen's disgusted eyes looking at me, along with the disappointment on my sister and father's faces. I knew this day would come. Why did it have to be like this? Indeed, it is still better for people to restrain their desires. I took a deep breath, turned to Lu Xian, and tried to explain weakly, it's nothing, I heard wrong. Lu Nguyen frowned slightly. She suddenly hugged me, not paying attention to the phone that hadn't been hung up yet. Leaning down, gently biting my earlobe, he sighed softly, "Okay, I heard wrong. But next time if you want to trick me, can you trick me a little more thoughtfully? Otherwise, it's like you're treating me like a fool." My face was hot. I couldn't help but let out a light moan. On the other side of the phone, my sister suddenly fell silent. I tried to push Lu Nuyen away, but she held me tight. Perhaps our movements here were a bit loud. My sister finally got angry. "Who is this woman? While you're there, I warn you. If you dare to touch him with a finger." Lu Nuyen feels it's too noisy, so he reaches out and hangs up. Then, she raised her head to look at me, gently stroked my cheek, and said coldly, "You are my boyfriend, don't contact her again until I agree to break up." I silently stared at the screen. The call was cut off. Looking up at Lu Nuyen, if I want to cut off contact with my sister, there is only one way, that is for her to kill me. I reluctantly changed into a tight-fitting white tuxedo. In fact, I had every intention of calling my sister immediately, confessing everything and asking her to come pick me up. But unfortunately, Lu Nuyen kept standing next to me, not taking a step away. In the mirror, she wrapped her arms around me tightly. The voice was low in his ear, mixed with a bit of stubbornness, very beautiful, very suitable for him. I have to admit that Lu Yen's aesthetic taste is much better than my sister's. My sister always likes to choose outfits studded with diamonds, looking like an up-and-coming rich man, rustic but flashy. But the suit that Lu Nuyen chose was the most fashionable style, almost decorated with precious stones, very sophisticated. So when she led me to the door of the party, people who knew Lu Nuyen passing by all complimented her, "Mr. Lu really has good eyes, even the boyfriend is more beautiful than the stars." It's true that talented boys and beautiful girls are made for each other. Being praised so much, I couldn't help but feel a little proud. I took the initiative to put my arm around Lu Yen's shoulder and jokingly leaned close to her ear, "Your friends also have sharp eyes." Lu Nuyen heard that and stopped walking. Today, she wore a high-end society dress, her white back delicately exposed, both cold and seductive. She reached out and gently squeezed my hand, the corners of her lips curled up into a faint smile, and said in a low voice, "Of course, you're so handsome, who wouldn't like to see you?" I saw that she was about to take the opportunity to secretly kiss me, so I quickly raised my hand to stop her. "I'm actually a bit frustrated. Why don't you realize that when you're in love, she's so attached to you?" Lu Nuyen squinted her eyes, then suddenly bent down and gently kissed my palm. I glared at her. "Just kiss her, don't blame me if you regret it later." It wasn't until I entered the hall that I realized something was wrong. Why does this place look so familiar? Not only was it a familiar place, but the moment I saw my uncle and Feng Hawk, the eldest son of the Feng family, standing in the middle of the hall, I almost choked. Although my family and the Feng family have always had a pretty good relationship, because of Lu's status as Yan in social events, the Feng family will still use the name of the group to send invitations to her. Today's birthday party brings together famous people in all fields. Inside there was no shortage of uncles who had witnessed me growing up since childhood. Just now, perhaps thanks to luck, I didn't run into anyone I knew, but now, as Lu Yen's boyfriend, I was forced to follow her to toast everyone at the party, including my uncle, my father, my aunt, and my sister. I was really a bit desperate. If I had known this, I would have confessed to my dad and sister a long time ago. Lu Nuyen saw my pale face and thought I was frightened by the solemn atmosphere of the party. Anyway, in her eyes, I'm still a simple young man. She held my hand tightly and softly reassured, "Don't be afraid, just follow me later." I looked down at my hand that was being held tightly, unable to pull it out, and my expression became even more desperate. "It's over," I sighed. Lu Nuyen's table was arranged right next to my family's table, making me not dare to raise my head for even a second. From the next table, my sister's angry voice suddenly came. No matter how many times I call, she still doesn't answer the phone, so just let her wander outside. My heart immediately cooled a bit and I bowed my head even lower. Actually, I didn't mean to not answer her phone call, it's just that my phone ran out of battery early and automatically turned off. My father sitting next to me was also not happy. He turned to ask his assistant, "Where is it? Haven't found it yet?" The assistant shook his head awkwardly. Of course, my dad couldn't find me outside because I was sitting right in front of him. I sat next to Lu Nuyen. Just by raising my head I could clearly see the gloomy faces of my father and sister. Under the table, Lu Nuyen gently hooked my hand with her finger. Suddenly, she frowned, turned her head and asked, "Is it cold? Why are your hands so cold?" I shook my head, trying to force a forced smile. Not only are my hands cold, but my heart is 10,000 times colder. The number of people coming to greet Lu Nuyen increased, making my palms start to sweat. Occasionally, a few curious eyes evaluate me. There were a few people passing by who didn't joke. "Lu Nuyen has known you for many years. It's the first time I see you with your boyfriend." "Indeed, he looks very handsome." One of them suddenly stopped, adjusted his glasses and squinted his eyes, suspicious. "Wait, this guy looks familiar. Is he the son of the Ko family who just returned from abroad?" In the blink of an eye, the entire auditorium fell silent. Everyone knows that Lu Nuyen and the Ko family have been secretly confronting each other for many years. Yet for many years, Lu Nuyen has never been involved in any love scandal. The first time she brought her boyfriend was the beloved son of the Ko family. The chatter at the party immediately subsided. All eyes turned to me, curious and eager to catch a glimpse. My father and sister also immediately turned their heads to look. Lu Nuyen's cold eyes next to them suddenly paused, and the hand holding me gradually loosened. I'm afraid the tense nerves in my head will suddenly snap. My mind is spinning, my eyes are dizzy. I tried to close my eyes, hypnotizing myself into fainting like that. But before I could faint, I felt Lu Yen's eyes falling straight on me. Her cold voice rang out, "The young master of the Ko family just returned home, Ko gone, right?" I raised my head to face Lu Yen's unpredictable face and awkwardly nodded. You can put Lu Nuyen in such an awkward situation. I'm definitely the first. Lu Nuyen remained silent. For a long moment, she lowered her eyes and looked down at our hands still clasped under the table. His face gradually became cold. Lu Nuyen is a very smart person. When she opened her mouth again, she understood everything. Just gently asked me, "So, your name is fake, your identity is also fake, and your feelings for me are also fake, right?" Even though I expected this result, I still tried to explain, "That's right, but I really..." My sister, who had been standing next to me happily watching the play for a long time, suddenly turned cold. Hoa made a sound. Reflexively, I immediately shut my mouth. Lu Nuyen was tired and bored. Even though her face was very unsightly, she still tried to say to me in the gentlest voice possible, "What a pity, from that day you started to hate me, always trying to avoid me." She laughed bitterly and slowly let go of my hand. "I forced you too much. Sorry." I was stunned as I watched Lu Nuyen leave. Everything was unexpected. She didn't scold me, nor did she have any intention of revenge, just gentleness and politeness. As soon as Yen left, my sister on the opposite side laughed uncontrollably, constantly giving me a thumbs up, praising, "Very good, really jealous, this family is so sinister and despicable, truly despicable." My sister has been tricking her for 3 years and has never been able to hurt Lu Nuyen. As for me, this time I deceived her feelings and directly hit her at the root. But I just bowed my head silently, without saying a word, poured a glass of wine, taking small sips, sipping and sipping without being able to drink it all. In the past, I always thought that just staying away from Lu Nuyen would be able to promptly end this budding relationship. But I overestimated myself. It wasn't until I actually left that I realized I had been in too deep for a long time. Actually, at first, my sister sent me to Lu Nuyen's company as a spy just because she wanted me to penetrate internally and steal commercial secrets. Being with Lu Nuyen was completely unexpected. At that time, my sister used her secret relationships to bring me into Lu's company Lu Nuyen, as her assistant. Because I was personally trained by my father from a young age and studied abroad at a prestigious school abroad, taking on this position was really easy for me. Before I left, my sister sinisterly patted my shoulder and advised, "Usually, pay attention, don't let her live in peace." I reassured her, "Don't worry, when it comes to playing tricks, our family has always been the best." Around that time, the surveillance cameras in Lu Nuyen's office were often broken. In the desk drawer, there are sometimes unexpected small creatures. Wi-Fi also keeps losing connection. The paper bin in the toilet is often out of paper. It's all done by me. Until one day, I bought a cup of coffee and was about to secretly pour it on Lu's jacket Lu Nuyen when she suddenly pushed the door open and walked in. She and I faced each other, both silent. After a long while, I hid my hand behind my back, smiled wryly, and explained, accidental, he. Lu Nuyen didn't get angry, she just looked up at me coldly and blurted out the words, "Contact human resources yourself." Because I couldn't call her, in order to stay, I could only run to the building of the partner company where she was discussing business to wait. As a result, just in time to see Lu Nuyen and a man intimately entering the hotel. Lu Nuyen looked uncomfortable, and the man next to him smiled and looked a lot like my father. It looked extremely sinister and cruel. I was a little surprised. Unexpectedly, this person's tricks were more sinister than mine. Right before Lu Nuyen entered the hotel, I rushed forward to perform a heroic act to save the beauty. At that time, I helped Lu Nuyen, who was being drugged. She had difficulty walking and could only lean on my lap. Her delicate face is blushing. Her usual almost pathological discipline and restraint at this time could only help her maintain some sanity. Lu Yen's breathing became more and more rapid, the hot breath blew on my neck, the distance was so close that I was just a little short of touching. I lowered my head to look at Lu Nuyen, her face was red, her shirt was loose, I caught a glimpse of her slim waist and white skin. I have to say, if we ignore the fact that she has been a hidden competitor with my family for many years, I actually have some sympathy for her. But as I sighed, I suddenly felt a slight itch in my neck. Bending down to look, I almost stopped dead. Lu Nuyen closed her eyes, frowned slightly, and leaned her head on my shoulder. Perhaps because the drug was starting to take effect, she couldn't control herself and started gently rubbing my neck with her lips. I put Lu Nuyen on the hotel bed and was about to leave, but she held my hand tightly and didn't let go. At that time, Lu Yen's body was so hot that it was scary. Her eyes were red, she suddenly bit her lip, moaned softly, her hands suddenly hugged my neck. When her lips caressed mine, I could only widen my eyes. By the time Lu Nuyen woke up, the medicine had worn off and the sky was already bright. She opened her eyes, looked around the messy room, her eyes slightly surprised. When her eyes fell on me walking and carrying breakfast, she suddenly stopped, looking at my wrist which still had marks from her fingernails from last night. "You?" Lu Yen's voice hesitated, a little hesitant. Then, she sighed, okay, it was my mistake, don't worry, I will take responsibility." Responsible for what? I was stunned for a moment, then suddenly remembered something and my face turned red again. But, just accidentally touching lips, that's all. Is that still responsible? Isn't that a bit? Just like that, Lu Yan and I accidentally came together. At first, she was just out of responsibility, and I was just out of advantage, so I didn't choose to refuse so I could easily get confidential information. I cling to Lu Nuyen almost 3 times a day. At first, she was a bit unfamiliar, but later, she decided to pull out a chair for me to sit next to. I'm a little worried that if I continue to make noise like that in the office, it will be too obvious. Several months passed, but I still hadn't gotten any trade secrets. On the contrary, Lu Nuyen's gestures towards me became more and more intimate. For example, one time, I accidentally fell asleep in the office. When I woke up, I met the eyes of Lu Nuyen, who had just taken off his jacket to cover me. She bent down slightly, a smile hidden in her eyes. It's still early, sleep a little longer. Or like another time, when I secretly checked the data on Lu's computer. Lu Nuyen, she suddenly walked in. I was startled and quickly opened the review page on the screen to hide it. The manager accompanying her immediately changed expression. Probably this was the first time he saw someone dare to use Lu's computer Lu Nuyen to view views. However, Lu Nuyen only paused slightly, then walked up behind me, looked for a moment, then suddenly spoke up. Reviewing Fox's stories is the best, but remember to like and follow to support Fox XH Girls. Then a warm hand covered mine. Just by turning my head, I can see her beautiful cold face. At this moment, her eyes were full of concentration, helping me press follow right on the computer filled with important documents. The manager next to him didn't even dare to breathe. My heart also started beating faster, feeling like my heart was about to jump out of my chest. Each beat rang out clearly in one ear. Unable to hold back, I finally fell in love, silently saying sorry to my sister. From the day Lu Nuyen left that party, I never saw her again. I sent her many messages apologizing. Not blocking me, but also not replying makes me very sad. On the contrary, my sister and father were extremely happy because in recent days, here, the stock price of Lu Nuyen Company continuously decreased sharply. They think that this business strategy is very successful. They are even looking for another guy to install next to Lu Nuyen as an insider. When I moved out of the apartment that Lu Nuyen rented for me and returned home, everyone in the family was waiting with excited faces. My sister gave me a supercar, and my father generously gave me money to choose a house of my choice. My aunt and uncle each gave me a red envelope. But I still couldn't hold back, my eyes were red, this time I really cried. After receiving all the gifts from everyone, I started to cry and said, "Dad, actually I really like Lu Nuyen." The atmosphere in the house immediately became quiet. My sister still kept a cold expression and didn't react much. Maybe she already guessed this, she just didn't want to believe it. But my father was completely surprised, his face turned blue and white. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Nuyen, you're really talented." It turns out that in the end, the loser was still us. She only lost a few shares, but we lost the only son in the family. My sister thought more clearly, patted my father's shoulder and smiled softly, "It's okay." Seeing Lu Nuyen's pathetic appearance last time was enough to satisfy me. As expected, my sister and Lu Nuyen have a personal vendetta. After that, she turned to look at my tear-stained face, looked disgusted, used a tissue to wipe my face and teased, "Don't cry anymore, crying is so ugly. I'll take a photo to use as a promotional photo for the company." These words were so cruel, I glared at her, but she just shrugged, pretending not to care. At that time, if Lu Nuyen sees it, maybe she won't like you anymore. That's good, it will extinguish your thoughts. Hearing that, I was so angry that I was about to go ahead and teach her a lesson, but my aunt patted her shoulder to console her. As the saying goes, stop crying, it's no big deal. It's just that I like a girl. Our family is not at the level where we have to sacrifice our children for the company. I nodded slightly, then turned to look at my father. Dad avoided my eyes, seemingly still angry, just said sternly, "Okay, enough chaos? Let's eat quickly." I took a deep breath as my heart felt cold. Actually, I predicted this one. Dad, sister, and Lu Nuyen have been fighting with each other for many years. The grudges both at work and personally are piled up countlessly. Telling them to accept Lu Nuyen entering this house without revealing me first is already a big respect. The meal that day took place in silence. After eating, my father didn't say a word and went straight to his room. I also sadly returned to my room, sadly lying on the bed, starting to count the money in the red envelopes that everyone gave me. It wasn't until I heard my sister and father leave the house to go to work that I opened the door. Lowering my head, I suddenly saw a jewelry box placed right in front of the door. At that moment, a message from my father appeared on the phone. "I promised your mother that I would take care of you until you grow up and marry the person you love. So, when you were young, I was a little strict with you, but now you can find someone you really like. I think it's also thanks to your mother's blessing in heaven. The box in front of the door is a gift my mother left for you when you grow up. Before she died, she told me that I hope you can be happy forever. I also hope that so." Tears suddenly welled up in my eyes. I still remember that year. It was the year my mother passed away from illness. In my memory, my mother was a person who loved freedom very much, so she later left this world without hesitation, to a place far, far away. When I came to Lu Nuyen's company again, the way people looked at me was different. Rumors spread quickly. The receptionist was very understanding and quietly told me, "Mr. Ko, Mr. Lu is not here today." I was a little disappointed and asked, "So when will she return to the company?" The receptionist glanced around warily, then waved her hand to signal me to come closer and said, "Actually, President Lu hasn't come to the company in the past few days. You understand, right?" Actually, I didn't really understand, but I still nodded vaguely. The receptionist stuffed a piece of paper into my hand and said, "This is the address of Mr. Lu's house. The manager told me to give it to you when I see you." I took it dumbfounded and said, "Thank you." When I arrived at Lu Nuyen's house, I rang the bell a few times before a maid came down to open the door. The house was very clean, but extremely cold. I went upstairs, knocked on each door, and in the last room there was movement inside. But no one opened the door. I hesitated for a moment, then called out, "Lu Nuyen." No one answered. I immediately pushed the door open and walked in. Beyond my expectations, Lu Nuyen was sitting neatly in front of the computer desk. As if sensing someone was coming, she reflexively turned her head. Lu Nuyen became noticeably thinner, her whole body exuding fatigue that was difficult to hide. Seeing me, she was stunned for a moment, then immediately stood up, politely but distantly said, "What are you doing here?" As soon as I took a step forward, Lu Nuyen immediately took a step back to keep a distance. "Brother Ko, are you looking for me?" I looked dumbfounded at the table next to me, saw it was filled with empty wine bottles, and hesitantly asked, "I heard you haven't been to the company for a long time, are you okay these days?" Lu Nuyen was silent for a moment, then lowered her eyes, her tone indifferent. "I haven't been feeling well recently, I want to stay home and rest for a while." Finally, I couldn't hold back anymore, I went up and hugged Lu Nuyen tightly. She was frozen in place, not moving at all. The cold and pure scent of her body crept into my nose. I rubbed my face into her shirt, trying to wipe away the tears on my face, thinking that when I raised my head later I couldn't look so pathetic. After reacting, Lu Nuyen seemed to want to push me away, but she didn't, just let me hug her and burst out laughing bitterly. "Kogan, stop joking with me. I'm also human, I also know how to feel pain. I don't let go." Lu Nuyen stood still for a long time, then sighed softly. Someone who is always rational like her also has days when she lets her emotions take over. She gently hugged me back, her voice carrying uncontrollable emotions. "Actually, I thought, if I hadn't taken you out that day, would you have been able to fool me a little longer?" Hearing that, I suddenly bowed my head, looked at her seriously and shook her head. "I've thought too much, it's impossible." Lu Nuyen's movement stopped. She regained her composure, retracted her hand and smiled softly as if mocking herself. "That's right, I was daydreaming." I nodded in agreement. "That's right." Seeing Lu Nuyen silent, I couldn't help but bring my face closer to her neck. Taking a light breath, she exclaimed, "What perfume have you changed to lately? It's so fragrant, it makes me just want to hug you. I can't think of anything else." Lu Nuyen was silent for a moment then said, "The company's new product is being tested." "Oh," I nodded, then spoke. To her, "I apologize. I tricked you before, but I thought of a way to make it up." Hearing me say sorry, Lu Yen's tone softened. "It's okay. Actually, I don't care that you lied to me. As for making up for it..." She hesitantly bowed her head, hiding the loss in her eyes, leaving only a bit of helplessness. "You don't need anything. It's okay if you're happy. We won't see each other again in the future." That's right, emotional compensation is the most meaningless thing. Lu Nuyen doesn't lack anything, just what she wants. Nothing can make up for it. But I was originally a stubborn person and considered Lu Nuyen's words to be like wind blowing in my ears. Bowing his head, holding her wrist tightly, his voice filled with excitement, "No, I must make it up to you." "How to compensate?" she asked. "I'll marry you. We'll be together forever, okay?" Lu Nuyen initially reflexively intended to refuse, but the next second, upon hearing what I said, she looked at me in shock with eyes of disbelief. The voice trembled. "These words cannot be said indiscriminately." I smiled at her. "Of course, I know. My father has already agreed. So I'll use my whole life to make it up to you, okay?" The large space suddenly became noisy. The sound of traffic outside the window, the sound of cicadas chirping in the trees, and the pounding heartbeat like an echoing drum. Just saw the next second, Lu Nuyen suddenly raised her head and kissed me, her voice full of excitement but still trying to suppress, "This time you are not allowed to go back on your word." On the day of her engagement, my sister kept an upset face the whole time. She still doesn't like Lu Nuyen. When Lu Nuyen drank the wine, her sister reluctantly raised the glass and touched it. Seeing her expression, Lu Nuyen just politely smiled, nothing more. But I, standing next to him, couldn't help but threaten, "If you keep making that face, I'll tell Dad." But she still didn't pay attention to me. Even though it was just an engagement ceremony, it was still held very solemnly. The banquet table is arranged in many rows, and guests take turns raising their glasses in a toast. By the time Lu Nuyen and I stepped on stage to exchange engagement rings, we were both exhausted from drinking the whole time. The engagement rings were a pair of diamond rings from the jewelry box my mother left behind. Its design is very unique. In the top right corner there is a small hollow cutout, forming an elegant, strangely beautiful butterfly. We tried to regain our spirits and exchanged rings. Oh, just as I was about to step off the stage, suddenly there was a sound of surprise. I was stunned, lowered my head and looked down, and saw that at some point a white butterfly had landed on the edge of the ring. It gently flapped its wings, as if bringing the most sincere blessings. In that moment, the summer wind suddenly blew. I heard a familiar voice from far away, "Be happy. Finally, there is someone who loves you for me." A few seconds later, the white butterfly spread its wings and flew away again. This time it no longer lingered, but gently moved towards the free and vast sky. The whole hall was silent. At this moment, there is no longer any doubt. Everyone understands that this is a relationship that has been witnessed by heaven. As for me, I just smiled slightly. "Thank you, Mom."